What's up, good people? What's up, good people? It's your boy, Dr. Leroy McKenzie Jr., the Impact Builder, and Happy New Year. We are in the second Tuesday of 2023, believe it or not, y'all. Here we grow again. I'll say it like that. Here we grow again. And I want to welcome everyone to the Author Showcase, brought to you by the National Black Unity News. Hope the light is kind of shining on that, but the National Black Unity News and, if I hold it back, you can see that little better. The National Black Unity News and J&F Enterprises. The National Black Unity News is a international newspaper that brings you just some extraordinary topics and extraordinary articles that you aren't going to readily read about, hear about, talk about in mainstream America. And it's a community-oriented newspaper, although even though it is a international newspaper, because the newspaper touches not only here in the United States, but it's in Europe, it's in parts of Africa, it's in the diaspora and down in the island. So we are doing our part as far as spreading the great news of what is going on in our community, for our community, and about our community. That's what the National Black Unity News is all about. As our esteemed editor, Brother David Murphy says, if not us, then who? And we are a solution-oriented newspaper, and that's what we do. We provide solutions. We provide answers to what is ailing our society, and we want you to be able to come in and join us. And as a part of the newspaper, we have the Author Showcase. You can see that over my shoulder there, where we bring you some of the greatest writers, some of the greatest authors, some of the most creative people that I've had the opportunity to meet over these past I think it's been this is the fourth or fifth year now. So it's been an awesome to be able to be a part of this and to be able to bring you these great authors and writers that contribute and bring their mission, their message, their motivation, and their movements that they come to talk about. So tonight is going to be no different than any other. And we will bring into you, starting off the year, and this is kind of a great way to start off this year. And I'm loving it. Y'all see me smiling because this young man, and I said that, I said it, this young man that is with me tonight is no stranger to the National Black Unity News, but hopefully no stranger to you all either. But he has another book out that we just believe, and I truly believe, is one that is so appropriate for this time and where we are, not only professionally, but also personally as well. Because I think what we're going to be talking about, which is leadership, if you can see that, leadership is not only in the workplace, which is what we're going to be dealing with, but leadership is also in the home too. And it's important. Leadership carries through every part of what we do in life. And those pillars of leadership mean so much to me, because whether it's the family, whether it's government, whether it's education, whether it's business, whether it's the church, leadership should have certain foundations and certain principles that they operate in. And so we're going to talk about a portion of those tonight. We're going to talk about their leadership with a servant's heart, leading from the workplace, with none other than Pastor Kevin Wayne Johnson. Pastor Johnson, how are you, sir? Pastor Kevin, I'm sorry, Pastor Kevin, I'm not trying to be too formal. But thank
all is well, my brother. Glad to be on board. Thank you for the invitation.
No, thank you for joining me. Thank you for starting this year off. This is, like I said, this is no other person I would rather start this year off than someone of your stature, and someone who I respect so much. And when it comes to this title called leadership, you are an exemplary, a true example of the word leadership, and what that stands for, and everything that you do, that you've done, exemplifies what I believe that leadership should emulate. When we think of blueprints, when we think of what we want to be able to do as leaders, I truly believe that you not only you not only talk about it, but you practice it and you put it into you put it into in such a way that leaders can understand it, and then hopefully that leaders can actually take from it and say, wow, this is something that I need to be able to instill as a part of me being a part of a leader. So thank you for joining us as well tonight too. So
Thank you. Thank you, sir.
I want to start off, if you can, for those that that may not be familiar with you. Can you introduce yourself to people and tell them just a little bit about who Kevin Wayne Johnson is, and kind of what you do and where you are?
Okay, well, I'll start out with saying I'm a man that loves the Lord. I'll be celebrating 30 years of marriage in a couple of months, and we raised 3 sons, and we have 1 goddaughter, and she has 2 daughters, so that means we have 2 god granddaughters. And I'm a product of Richmond, Virginia. Went to public schools there, and a graduate of Virginia Commonwealth University, and the son of a U.S. Marine. So Dad didn't play. And he just recently celebrated 85 years. He's doing well,
Oh wow.
and he still thinks he can take me,
Yep.
right? And because he is a Marine, I let him to believe that he can.
Absolutely. I love that. I love that.
Yeah. I spent 34 years with the federal government. 1 year out of college, I went to start a career with the government. Didn't know it was going to last 34 years, but I retired 5 years ago. And in parallel with that, I have 22 years of ministry leadership. I've served the local church as a deacon, and as an associate pastor, and as a senior pastor. And I'm still continuing in that journey in pastoral leadership with the local church, and in various other capacities as well, all of which led me to start to write. And as I speak, I am either a principal author or a contributing author to 20 books over the past 20 years. And right now, my main focus is on the timely topic of leadership. So that's what I write about. That's what I speak about, do a lot of training in that area, and also coaching and mentoring.
Absolutely, absolutely. So as y'all can see, the resume is full. And I love it. I love it. Now I want to ask you, and you mentioned it slightly there, but I'd like to ask you, what got you started writing? What was that thing that made you think about putting pen to paper, and then started to say, well, you know what, I think I can, or I think I want to write a book? What was that? When was that you thought about that?
Yeah, so during my government career, I started writing articles that were related to my career field, which was acquisition, contracting, and procurement.
Okay.
And I would write these articles, and then I would submit them to the magazine that pretty much governed that particular career field. And interestingly enough, they would always print my articles. It could be 1 page, or it could be 5 pages on different topics in terms of what was going on in that space. And at that time, the magazine had about 20,000 subscribers around the country. And so people started to look at Kevin Wayne Johnson as a subject matter expert because his articles were being published. Now, that really was not my intent, but that's how it was interpreted. So one thing led to another, and the highest ranking government official at the time actually read one of my articles over the weekend and the following Monday called my boss's boss to say, tell me more about Kevin Wayne Johnson. I would like for him to accompany me on Capitol to testify before Congress on a very, very important matter.
Oh, wow.
Do I have your permission for Kevin to join me? And then, one thing kind of led to another, but that's what really got me started with writing. And it dawned on me that if I could have these articles published in a national magazine with a subscribership of 20,000 people, then maybe I should start writing books, take it one step further. And that's really what got me started with the writing. It gave me confidence. I found it to be very therapeutic and very fulfilling. And it was getting results. And even though I was just writing just because I enjoyed it, it really gave me some visibility and some additional responsibility. So it really helped to catapult my career, number one, but equally important, the confidence to start moving beyond just writing an article and start writing books.
I like that. I like that. I like that.
Yep.
I like that. And it's funny because I always think about, my writing career. And I think about, if anyone would have asked me would I've been an author or a writer, because I wrote in college. I wrote poetry in college. That was what I did. That was how I started, just writing to get what was inside this mind out. Just the things that I saw and didn't think anything of it at the time. But when I think when somebody puts that bug in your ear, it's like, well, you should like, and I was just like, well, I don't know the first thing about writing a book or, writing and everything like that. And to see it now, some years later, and how the trajectory of it and how it has grown. I'm gonna ask you this real quick. How have you noticed the growth in your writing from when you first started writing to now? That those two Kevin Johnsons, what's that look like?
Yeah, so I have learned the publishing industry pretty well over 20 years in terms of what works and what doesn't work. And I am a nonfiction writer, but I've learned to incorporate stories into my book. People really resonate with stories because it draws them closer to the author. So when I first started writing, it was just nonfiction, information based on research and study. I still do that because my books are intended to educate, not necessarily entertain.
Right.
But I incorporate personal stories into my chapters, which give people some realization of who the author is, and it gives them something that they can really relate to, because most of us struggle with the same things. Most of us celebrate for the same reasons. And the more that I can put that onto the pages of the books, the more people resonate with that. So that's just really a part of improving your craft, growing, getting better, developing your style. Because when it's all said and done, you're trying to meet the need of your customer. And in the instance of an author, our customer is who? Our readers.
Yeah.
And they really enjoy reading the stories because it tells them a little bit more about who the author is. So that kind of describes how I've grown and my current style of writing.
Yeah, and I like that too, because I think the more that our readers, and even when it comes to leadership, which we're going to talk about leaders, the more that that our target market or our target audience can relate to us, the more relatable that we are. I think it's the more they, that they're more able, they're able to say, wow, okay, this is somebody just like me, somebody that has had experiences that are similar to what I've gone through, and they can understand. When I think of storytelling, and you use the perfect word, I always think about Les Brown. I think about his craftsmanship in being able to tell a story in such a way that it resonates with those of us that are in the audience or have read his books. We get captivated and caught in the stories that he tells us. So that is so true. If you had to use one word to describe your writing style, what would that be?
Probably educate. I'm always interested in educating my audience and my reader. We don't know what we don't know,
Mm,
and helping people to become much more familiar with the topic that I'm writing about, which is leadership. I would say that one word is to educate, because I want people to walk away with knowing something they didn't know or would not have known had they have not purchased the book. So that's really the one word that always comes to mind. That's also the same way that I teach and I train, and when I'm speaking as well. I'm always about educating the audience.
yeah, I love that philosophy because I think that when we learn something that we don't know or haven't known before, or even when we get a way of looking at something that we already know, but being able to see it in a different way. Um, I think that makes all of us, it makes us better. And I'm always about making people better. So if I can get you to, if I can say
Mhm.
something that you might be familiar with, but get you to be like, you know what? I never thought about it that way, you know, and it gives them an additional way of seeing something. It gives them, as one of my friends said, it gives them a different lens to look at it, to see something. And I love my my pastor does that with the scripture, but then one of his closest friends that used to preach, he passed away now, but his name was Pastor Booth. And I would love to hear him preach because he could take a text that you read a number of times, you know the text and everything, but he would give you a different way of seeing it. Be like, how did you get that out of that? How did you get that out of that text there? Where did you get that from? So I love that you say that you educate people in such a way that they come away with, they come away from I call it encounters. They come away with the encounter from you, whether it's through you personally or whether it's through your books, being educated. Because when we get education, we become smarter. I think we
Yep,
become smarter when we get educated.
absolutely.
you know,
Yeah.
um, I wanna ask you what made you want to write this book? Serving with a leadership heart, a leader in the workplace. What made you want to write this particular book?
Yeah, so you'll notice on the cover that I emphasize the word leadership. It's in bold, but I also put an emphasis on the heart.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So the reason that I chose that title is because it's a perfect alignment with what is here in the mind in terms of subject matter expertise, intelligence, and acumen, which gives us credibility when we show up because people expect for the leader to know what they're doing. So that's a thumbs up. But I also emphasize the heart because the scriptures remind us to guard our heart with all diligence. From it flows the issues of life. And I want leaders to celebrate, acknowledge, and recognize that it's perfectly okay to be a leader that demonstrates compassion and empathy and shows care and value, respect, and honor for those that we are entrusted to lead. And when we do that, those two merge, the subject matter expertise and then what's in the heart. And that's what makes the best leaders. And I'm a firm believer that better leaders help to make the world a much better place. It makes our team better. It makes our organization better. It makes our company better. It makes our church better. It makes our government agency better. We don't typically get that type of training in school or in seminary. You have to go out and find it. And so these are some principles and strategies that I've learned over a long career and in ministry leadership for 22 years that I'm really passionate about sharing with other people. So that's why we emphasize the word leadership, and we also emphasize the heart. On the cover of both books, one cover is behind you. So this is the second book in the series. And then also in the first book in the series that came out just before the pandemic, you'll see that I'm sticking with the same title, but each book has a slightly different subtitle, but the heart will always be emphasized and referenced and highlighted because I want us to lead with a servant's heart. And so that's why I'm passionate about it. I don't find any other titles out there like that. There are titles out there that reference the word servant leader or leading like a servant, but leadership with a servant's heart it took me some time to come up with that particular title. And then each one has a unique subtitle to give us even more reference in terms of exactly what the content of the book is all about. So when leaders can merge and align their intelligence and their acumen here with what's in the heart and be compassionate and be empathetic, it's not a weakness to be a leader that can be compassionate and have some empathy, then we're on our way to great leadership, great teams, great organizations, and a much better world.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, are these leadership books? You mentioned something that really sticks out to me because I asked one of my ministry friends. I asked him if they taught the business aspect of church in seminary, and he said no. He said they don't. That's not something that's readily taught there. And I'm gonna ask you the same thing about leadership. Is leadership something that's readily, talked or taught in seminary? And why do you think that that's not something that's taught in there? Because you would think that would be, kind of a priority.
I'm going to say this very respectfully, but I have to say it very directly because I have to speak the truth. How you going to teach something that you don't know?
Ooh-wee. Uh-oh. Ooh-wee.
How can you prioritize it if in your mind it's not a priority because no one ever taught you?
Yeah.
So it takes individuals like you and I, men and women who have a passion for a particular topic that's very important to tell the truth and share that truth with as many people as possible to make it a priority everywhere that we go. The principles that we teach are not readily taught in the majority of institutions of higher learning. They'll teach you some basic principles,
Right.
but they don't really have an action plan for you to really follow and develop. There's no accountability. You don't really measure where you are in terms of your growth. I don't recall taking any assessments at all in college that told me anything about my leadership style, my emotional intelligence, my personality style. There was no DISC, none of that. So you have to find these things out, after you paid a couple $100,000 to get your degree. Then you find out later some of the real principles and strategies that can really propel you in your career. So you get the theory in most of these schools, including seminary, but you don't really get actionable, practical, foundational information that you can move out on, that you can implement, and that you can exercise. And that's just the truth. Now, it's not universal. there are some pockets of excellence, but by and large, most people in your sphere of influence who are in leadership positions, they don't know anything about how to lead people. They're experts at what they do and getting the job done, but they don't have very much acumen when it comes to leading people and taking care of people, developing people, giving them resources and training, and helping them to move on to the next assignment. The overwhelming majority of people in leadership positions don't have that. They haven't been taught, and it doesn't come naturally. While I do believe, because leadership is a spiritual gift, we do find that in the book of Romans. While I do believe that there are born leaders, I also believe that they still have to be cultivated and trained and mentored and coached on how to execute and implement that spiritual gift. And that's what we share with people. So the answer to your question is, that's a long-winded answer to your question, but by and large, a lot of people that go to these different schools and seminaries, and they come out and they find themselves in a position of leadership, they don't know how to lead people. It's not their fault. It's just that the people that were supposed to teach them were not able to because they weren't taught. So it's not a priority.
Yeah, and that goes for not just, not to me, not just in seminar, but I think that's in corporate America too. And I found that out. I was just like, it's some, these folks don't have it.
I got to get out of here.
I'm like, they don't have a clue,
They're just trying, all they're doing, they're just trying to generate revenue. They don't care anything about the people.
Yeah. And I think that's one of the things that's still missing in corporate America. I mean, and the years that I spent in corporate America, it was just so, I saw this where we are coming just because I saw the way that the folks that were in those positions. And like you talked about, they were either not prepared for the position, or equipped for the position, or they just wanted the title and didn't want any of the other work that came along with being a leader in the workplace. And that's, that's where it has led us in this first, these first 2 decades, going into the 3rd decade of this 21st century, and what leadership looks like. And we're going to get to that, because I will definitely want your take on what 21st century leadership looks like. But I want to ask you this. Can you tell us a little bit about the book, what's in this particular book? Because I know you said you have a series, and so what's in this book that you deal with versus the other.
Yeah, well, in the first book, we really talked more about servant leadership from personal relationship perspective.
Okay.
In this latest edition, and the cover is right there behind you, we really get into leadership with a servant's heart in the workplace. And your workplace is one of 5 areas. It's either government, which is city, county, state, and federal. It's corporations, small, medium, and large. It's nonprofit organizations, it's academic institutions, and it's the church. It's those 5 areas. So we talk about everything from coaching to the heart, the condition of the heart. We talk about principles and strategies, and we give nuggets and tools and tips on how to effectively lead people across the different generations, because they all have different needs and desires and wants. We focus on the frontline leader and their need, the mid-level leader and their need, and then the senior level leader in terms of what they might need. We unpack coaching. We take a look at the leadership assessment tools and what that means. And we also look at the life of many different leaders And we talk about how they went about leading their people and their teams and their organizations to higher heights, because they showed that they cared and they had value for their people. So the books are structured such that they're broken down into three different parts, and then each part has three chapters, and each chapter ends with what we call thought-provoking, open-ended questions for you to really think about in terms of a self-reflection, or you can have a conversation with a group. And we want you to really reflect on what you read in each chapter. And then there's 5 open-ended questions that conclude each chapter, so that you can have an opportunity to kind of jot down some notes. You can actually write them right there in the book, jot down some notes as it relates to how you're currently leading, or perhaps where you want to be one day in your leadership journey. And like I said earlier, I also incorporate some personal stories to share with you about my journey to leadership. And I talk about some of those really, really good leaders that impacted my life. And I'll share a story or two about a couple of those leaders that at the time I wish I had never met, but I'm glad I did, because they taught me how not to lead,
Yeah,
because they were so bad.
right,
So,
right.
so I share them as well.
Yeah, and that's the thing, because you can have you can have folks that can teach you what to do, and then you can have folks that teach you what not to do. And you say, I want to do nothing
Right.
of what this person is or does, and simply, and I think both of us have had a bit of each of those in our careers and in our
Yep.
lives and everything like that. It's just like, whoo, I'm like, oh my goodness. I'm like, really? You know? What do you want? What do you want the reader to come away with after they've read this? You know, after they've read this one, this particular book, what do you want them to come away with? What do you want them to pull out of here that they could use in order to be able to?
Yeah,
Um,
I want them to really think, right? I want them to really think about their journey, and I want them to think about where they may need to make some modifications and
okay.
revisions in their
Mhm.
current leadership style. Because when it's all said and done, the common theme that people will pick up on is that I want people to walk away with being a better leader. So whether you aspire to be a leader or you are already in a leadership position, I want people to kind of walk away thinking about what they can do to be better. I have a little theme. It's a 3-pronged theme that I use for the book and for my national book tour in 2023, and that is to know better. That's the education piece. Now that you know better, I want you to do better. That's the execution and implementation, because the result is that you would lead better. So know better, do better, lead better.
I
And
like
that's
that.
that's what you'll see that theme throughout. That's what I want people to really resonate with and to really walk away from. Again, we don't know what we don't know. You can't be a good leader based upon what you don't know. But as you gain new information and new knowledge, then do something. And that's the do better part, because the ultimate result is that you and I will lead better. So know better, do better, lead better.
That sounds like a
I'm a trademark that.
yeah, you're gonna have to trademark that one, because I love that. That's a great mantra for 2023 for someone. Because like you said, what good does it do you to know better, to do better, but not to lead better? You can't do the first two and leave the third one out. To me, you can't do the second one. You can't do better if you don't know better, and you can't lead better if you don't, you can't lead better if you don't know better. So they tie into each other.
Yep.
And it leads you to, as I always say, Pastor Kevin always say, I want to make people better by the end of the year than they were at the beginning of the year. making people better. How do we make ourselves better? But then, especially those of us that are leaders, how do we make those that we lead, how do we make them better? And then how do we make those who encounter us better? And I know you and I could talk about the Bible all day, but to me, that's where, to me, it gets grounded in. I look at Jesus's ministry. He was about knowing better, doing better, and leading better. Everybody that he had an encounter with, he did those three things that you just talked about. They knew better after they met him. They did better, or at least most of them did better once they had an encounter with him. And then those that were leaders, those disciples that he had, they led better because of what he poured into them. So I love that. I think that is that's powerful. That's powerful there. And folks can,
Thank you, sir.
yeah, I definitely believe if there's three things that you're gonna come away with after you read this book, you're gonna know better, you're gonna do better, and you're gonna lead better. You'll come away with that. I promise you. That's a sure enough guarantee. I truly can guarantee that, you know. And I like that. What does the title servant with the leader's heart, leading in the workplace, what does that mean to you? When I say that back to you, what does that mean?
Well, kind of going back to how we started and how I responded a little bit earlier, in the title represents exactly what I teach and what I train and what I coach. I want leaders to think about, as you're leading people, again, your credibility is tied into what you know, because people want to follow a leader that knows what they're doing. So that's the mind part. But I want us, and when I think about the title, I also want us to think about the heart. And I want us to match what's in the heart with what's in the mind. So we show up with subject matter expertise, but let's also show up with giving a care about those that we are entrusted to lead. Because they need to know that their leader is looking out for them, has their back, will provide them resources, training, developmental opportunities, and will be there to help open doors for promotional opportunities. So if we honor and value and care and respect those that we are entrusted to lead, while at the same time demonstrating acumen and subject matter expertise, that's what makes a good leader. And to me, that encapsulates what the title of the book is all about.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, I want you to, if you can, I want you to give that leader that's watching, can you give them, that organization that's watching, what are 3 steps to being an effective leader? When organizations looks at their leadership group, what are the first 3 steps that they should look at being effective? How can they be more effective going into 2024? Because we're going into a new year. How can they be? What are 3 things that they can begin with to begin?
Yeah. So the first one is, in the process of presenting yourself as friendly and approachable, step number 1 is take the time to get to know your people, but reciprocate and make yourself available so they get to know you. Because now we're on our way to building a relationship. And a precursor to trust is having a relationship. And so it starts with getting to know them and then making yourself available so they get to know you. We're not necessarily talking about becoming buddy-buddy in the workplace, but you can create an environment and an atmosphere where it is friendly and people do take the time to get to know each other, at least on a professional level, if not on a personal level. So that's the first one of the first pieces of advice that I give to all leaders. Secondly, is you got to learn to be a good listener. When you listen to people, I didn't say you have to agree with what they're saying, but if you listen to people, it sends a subliminal message to them that you actually care what it is they have to say.
Yeah.
And the number of people who try to articulate their point and people change the subject on them or cut them off before they can finish
Right.
is really astronomical in terms of the number of times it happens.
Yeah.
But if you're the type of leader that will listen and hear a person out, I'm not saying agree, but just hear them out without interrupting and without cutting them off, it sends a message to that recipient or the person that's speaking that their message is very important. And it's really helpful in the relationship, right? Again, let them finish their point because you're demonstrating that you listen. And when you demonstrate that you're listening, you send the message that you care and that you respect what it is they have to say. And a lot of people crave that because there are countless number of people in our sphere of influence who never get a chance to finish their point.
Yeah. Yeah.
So those are the first 2 points. The third point that I recommend in terms of a step of being an effective leader is just being a person of high character. Do what you say and say what you do and be on time and make sure your word is good. It sounds simple, but it goes such a long way if you're a person of character
Yeah.
that people can rely on. Wow, that's an effective leader. And so those 3 things right out the gate, those are 3 steps that I articulate to countless number of audiences that I have the opportunity to be before. It sounds simple, and it is, but it's so profound in making a difference, no matter where you are in your government agency, in your corporation, in your church, in your academic institution, and in your nonprofit organization. It makes a huge difference because people aren't used to being under leaders that follow those 3 steps. Not consistently, they aren't.
Yeah. Yeah, and like you said, that's definitely, and it's like you said, it's simplistic, but at the same time, to get people to actually implement them and implement those 3 steps, I think
Yep.
Is the hard part. Because we can say it all day, we can talk about it all day, but actually doing those things, the do part, as you talked about, do better. That's the doing better to me. And
Yep.
I think about what you just said, and I also think about one of the first things you said was about listening. And I have an acronym for leader, and that L is to listen and to learn. Good leaders listen and they learn from what it is that they're hearing. If I'm, like you were saying, if I'm constantly interrupting you, I'm not listening to what you're saying, and I'm not learning from what you're saying. You know, and it's just, I think it's vital moving into 2023 if we're going to be better, effective leaders. We definitely have to, we definitely have to listen more than we talk. And the old adage that they say that's why God gave us 2 ears and 1 mouth, because he wants us to listen more than he wants us to speak, and he wants us to talk, which I believe is very, very true. And I think those that we look at that are effective leaders, if you notice, they don't have to say a lot because they're listening. They're listening and learning from what it is that they are observing. So I love those 3 action steps that leaders can use going into 2023. What's the most difficult part of leadership that you would say? What's that part? that somebody who is a leader or someone who may be grooming to become a leader, what would you say this is the most difficult part of it that you're gonna have to learn or kind of get to know about or deal with.
That's an easy one there, Leroy. The answer is P-E-O-P-L-E, people. That's always the most difficult part of leadership. People. And personalities, attitudes, personal agendas, modus operandi, schemes, opinions. I mean, I could go on and on and on. Leaders have to deal with all of this stuff.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
not one time did you hear me say it's easy, because I'm not here to say it's easy, but it is doable. I've seen it done, and it's definitely doable. But the most difficult part of leadership is people, because we're dealing with we're in a very unique time in American history with technology. For the first time, we have 5 different generations of people in the workplace. You know, we have traditionalists that are still in the workplace. You know, they're in their 70s. They're working because they like what they do, and in some cases, there's a financial need, and in some cases, it's both. And at the same time, we got the Gen Zs coming into the workplace, you know, out of college, and you know, their whole world in terms of how they operate, how they communicate, how they process information is much different. You still have baby boomers, that's my generation. You still have millennials, and you still have Gen X's, of course. All 5 generations in the workplace at the same time, and not one group of people think alike.
Yeah.
And leaders have to maneuver through all of that in terms of how we communicate, how we deal with people, how we send out guidance and direction. So people by far is the most difficult and the most challenging part of leadership, but it's doable. It's definitely doable. There are principles and strategies that are in place that help us to understand how people tick, and for them to better understand how we as the leader operate, and how we can come together as a team. Because when you look at team, TEAM, it's all about together, everyone achieves more. So how can that leader get these individual parts of the team to come together and work together and get things done? So people by far is the most difficult part of leadership.
I like that. I like that. Yeah. Definitely, you definitely have to be able to handle different personalities, because the way that you talk to one person that you're leading is not necessarily going to be the same way that you talk to another person that you're leading or that you lead. It reminds me, and I don't know if you've read this this book or not, but by John Maxwell. It's called everybody communicates. I mean, oh man.
And few connect.
Yeah, that's what, that was one of the most powerful books that I read last year. It honed in on the difference between communication and connecting, and how you as an effective leader, how you go from communicating to connecting with people that you're going to be leading. It's just a phenomenal book, and I think goes into you know, what you were saying, dealing with people. You got to be able to know how to connect, you know, with people. We're in the first month of 2023. And what would you say that leadership looks like going into 2023? And then what advice would you give to leaders going into 2023?
Yeah. Leadership looks much different than it did just 5 years ago or before the pandemic. For me, leadership for 2023 looks like taking the time to get to know and understand and collaborate with a diverse group of people on your team like never before, because we have people on our left and on our right. They need more feedback. They need you to be more communicative. They need you to understand that they want to work at home, and we should listen to the reasons why. And if it makes sense, make the necessary accommodations.
Yeah.
How we go about negotiating with those that we're leading that really want to stay home and work, but we want them to be in the office. How do we negotiate an amicable solution if we're not good listeners?
Yeah.
So it's a new day, it's a different time. Many people are really, really glued to their technology. And
Sure.
how do we work around that? Adults, young people alike. From some vantage point, every last one of us in some way are addicted to it. Whether it's email or social media or canvassing the websites or whatever it might be, watching TV on it, movies, etc. But that leadership looks a lot different. So I just encourage all of us to be adaptable and flexible as best we can to meet the needs of those that we are entrusted to lead. And that means taking the time to kind of listen to what it is they have to say. Do a listening tour within your respective organizations and hear what people have to say. 7,000 nurses walked off the job in New York City.
Oh, wow.
Because somebody didn't listen to what it is they had to say.
Yeah.
So they said, okay, well, if you're not going to listen, then we'll just walk away.
Wow.
Know what you're going to do. And they're having to transport patients in the ICU to other facilities because they don't have any nurses to watch over them. So I'm not saying that negotiations didn't happen, and I'm not saying that they weren't listened but there somehow, some way. So that's what I want people to think about for 2023. Be more open and receptive to hearing people out, making the necessary adjustments and revisions in what was, and focus on what is. We have a population of men and women that have demonstrated during the pandemic that they can be productive and high performers by working at home. And that's not just make it a mandate that you better come back in the office or else. Let's be a little bit more empathetic and a little bit more compassionate in terms of what that might mean going forward.
Yeah, I got a great question for you from the Facebook chat. They asked this question. Dr. Marvin Perry asked us, how would you define former President Obama's leadership style?
President Obama was very accommodating as it pertains to the audiences that he was trying to appease, and recognizing and acknowledging some of those promises that he had to keep based on the demographics that voted for him to get in office the first time and then re-elect him a second time. So President Obama always presented himself as friendly and approachable. So that's why his message resonated with so many people. He came into office after the 43rd president, who at that time was considered to be the worst until 45 showed up.
Right.
And so his timing, President Obama's timing was great. And when he said, yes, we can, and the way that he said it, and incorporating we and us and not me and I, resonates with people. And it showed that he was listening to his constituents who ultimately went to the ballot box and voted for him. So his leadership style mirrored that in terms of making sure that he addressed the concerns of the men and women that voted for him to get him into office. And I think it had a lot to do with him being able to pass the Affordable Care Act, I believe,
Yeah.
and some of the other legislation. You also noticed that he was able to oil those squeaky wheels where some legislation was passed in terms of taking care of certain communities that had a pretty loud voice. He responded, and in part, they voted in the affirmative, and he had a second term. So he was a listener. He really was. He was a listener. Not to mention, he demonstrated that empathetic and compassionate side by always demonstrating that he was a wonderful husband and a fantastic father. And he always demonstrated that he could work with people. Remember, he always extended his hand across the aisle,
Yeah.
even during those times when they slapped it away
Right.
and said, "Get out of here. We're gonna do this anyway." But he would extend his hand. Remember that incident where something was taken out of context with that police officer
Yeah.
in Boston,
Yeah.
and then he invited him to the White House
Right.
to have a beer,
Right.
right? That's something that people can relate to, and people they kind of like that, right?
Yeah.
And they were like, "Oh, there's a passionate side to this man." So that's sort of my takeaway from his leadership style, which was really favorable for him.
Yeah, that's a great question, and I like that you showed actually what you had talked about today in his leadership style and what he's
Yep.
done and still I think still continues to do in certain ways in the things that he does. So what's next for you? What you got coming up in 2023 for Pastor Kevin Wayne? What's on the agenda for this year that people can look out for in addition
Well,
to the book?
yeah, for all of 2023, I'm in the midst of my national book tour. It actually started in December of 22. I'm going all the way through December of 2023. We're going to be in 20 cities across the United States. We're also going to be later this year, we're going to be in Kenya, Africa, and then we're going to be in the nation of Dubai, leading a conversation on the timely topic of leadership. Just really heightening the level of awareness about what servant leadership is all about, why it's so important, the difference that it would make within your team and within your respective organizations, and equally important, how it's going to make people feel and be the difference maker. So I'm leading these conversations. Part of what we're doing in this conversation, I had one a little bit earlier today as well. I have a bunch of these scheduled throughout all of 2023. We're going to be in Minneapolis. We're going to be in Miami, Houston, Martha's Vineyard, my hometown of Richmond, Virginia. Of course, our nation's capital, which is right here in the local area. We're going to be in Atlanta, Los Angeles, and some other cities that are already on the calendar and others that will be coming. And like I said, in September, we'll be in Kenya, Africa, working with a group. Leroy will be there as well. And then in the nation of Dubai, because I'm part of a group called Black Authors Matters. And there's a tour, there's a group of us that are touring the country. But in addition to that, I'm going to be doing some other things as well, specifically related to my company, Johnson Leadership Group, and also some other pastoral work. And then, of course, the work that we're doing as an author. And we're working with all of these different organizations that I mentioned. We're working with government, we're working with churches, we're working with nonprofits, academic institutions, as well as corporations. So all of that's going to be happening in 2023. You'll be seeing the information posted on social media, on the website, and you'll be seeing me at different conferences, conventions, and summits, and then bookstores as well. I have a partnership with Barnes and Noble, and also, believe it or not, what's really interesting, they have a national authors program I'm in partnership with Kroger grocery store.
Oh, wow, okay, okay.
So I'll be doing book signings in 9 states in
At Kroger's?
selected Kroger grocery store. So when you're picking up your Kellogg's Frosted Flakes and your grits and your fried apples and your collard greens, stop on by and
No,
buy a book.
absolutely. Put that in that cart right there with you. I
There
love
you
it.
go.
I
Pay at
love
the
it.
cashier.
You know, I love it. I love that. I love that. And I think we as authors too have to understand that it doesn't, what being an author, being an entrepreneur looks like in this 21st century doesn't have to look like what it has traditionally looked like. It doesn't have to just be in bookstores. It doesn't have to just be at conferences or expos. It can be at the different places where, I mean, books are sold in grocery stores. They still have the magazines. They still
Yeah.
have books that they sell in the grocery store. So when you're thinking this year about that, when you're thinking about, as an author, where you can actually have your books, think about those partnerships that you can have with national national grocery stores. That's wonderful, wonderful. So
Yeah.
how
Yeah. I
can
had never heard of it before, Leroy, but when they approached me, I said, well, tell me more. It's a program in 9 states around the country. Most of them are in Central Time,
yeah,
Mountain Time, or Pacific Time. So I said, well, whenever I'm there, we'll make it happen. So Houston is the first stop.
oh, okay. Yeah. Because I know that I don't know if we have how many Kroger's supermarkets we have here on the East Coast. I know that there may be a few or whatever because the name. I know that I do know the name.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
it's an I don't say upscale grocery store, but definitely
yeah. They're more prominent in Virginia than they are in
yeah,
Maryland, but
yeah.
yeah, because we have quite a few in Maryland. They're interesting. I mean, in Virginia.
Mhm.
Interestingly enough, Virginia is not part of the program yet, but hopefully they'll be coming on board.
Yeah. Now for those other organizations and those other folks that want to connect with you, how can they purchase the book one? But then if they want to connect with you to have you come speak with their organization, do training as you do, how can they do that? How should they go about doing that?
Yeah. So the name of the company is the Johnson Leadership Group, and you can reach me at Kevin at the Johnson Leadership Group. And then right there on the website as well, the Johnson Leadership Group is all of our contact information, telephone, etc. You can reach me by phone or you can reach me by email. The books are distributed through Ingram, so they're available everywhere that books are sold. In any bookstore that you go into, if they don't actually have it on the shelf, you can ask the owner or whoever's working there to order it, and they can get it. I'm in partnership with Barnes and Noble.
Mhm.
A lot of the events that I'll be doing in 2023 are at Barnes and Noble stores. They're also available at Target and, of course, at Amazon. That goes without saying. Everybody who publishes a book is available on Amazon. But more specifically, Barnes and Noble, you'll be finding me at a lot of the Barnes and Noble stores around the country in 2023. And the books are also available through Target as well. So any of those places, and then of course the website www.thejohnsonleadershipgroup. It's available there as well.
Absolutely. Pastor Kevin, it is always I come away from our conversations better. I always come away from our conversations better, and I also come away from our conversations educated too, as you talked about. And just listening to you, learning from you, and seeing how you one conduct yourself and how you go about your business, the Johnson Leadership Group, and just everything that you do personifies exactly what we talked about today. It personifies knowing, doing, and then leading to do. And I appreciate you taking time out to come and talk to us at the National Black Unity News. The authors should be a part of the author showcase. It's always great. He will be in the current issue. I believe the digital is online, so you can go to www.tnbun.com and subscribe to the newspaper. In 2023, we're going bigger, better, broader. As I mentioned, it is a international newspaper, but we want to make sure that we get even bigger and better in 2023. That is one of our missions and one of our goals going into the year. And by bringing you great people such as Pastor Kevin Wayne Johnson, that are just absolutely phenomenal. And there's so many other topics and stories that you can find in the newspaper as well, in addition to the author showcase. It's just a phenomenal newspaper that you're going to learn something, get that education that we talked about, because you can read about some topics and things that you might not readily read about, that you can see what's going on, not just on a local level or even a national level, but a international level, and even a diaspora, even within the diaspora of everywhere that we are, which I think is crucial that we know those types of things, and we put that kind of information out there. So Pastor Kevin, thank you so much. I appreciate you taking this time out, coming and talking to us and giving us that firm foundation to start 2023 off on as leaders, because I think it's important. Leaders have to be taught. I call it the picture in the glass theory, which is where you go to a restaurant and you go to sit at your table, and there's place settings, and at each place setting there's a glass, and they'll bring out their pitcher of water, pitcher glass of soda, juice, or whatever they bring out, and the pitcher that they brings out pours into the glasses. And sometimes we have to understand that sometimes we're the pitcher where we pour into, but then sometimes we're the glass and we need to get poured into. As leaders, we must always be sure to get poured into. That's where the listening and the learning comes in. Because if we get poured into as leaders, we then can pour into those that we lead. Can't just be, can't be pouring out, because that leaves you with nothing. You won't be able to pour into those that need you as a leader to be able to lead them if all you're doing is pour. You won't be able to deal with those people that you need to be filled up for to be able to deal with. So, but Pastor Kevin, again, thank you so much. One more time before we go, if you can give your contact information, how people can connect with.
Yeah, www.thejohnsonleadershipgroup.com. That's the website, and the email address is kevin@thejohnsonleadershipgroup.com. Between the website and the email, you can reach out to me. Phone number is also there on the website. There's a contact us page that you can fill out as well. And I look forward to hearing from you. And we do have a policy that we respond to all inquiries within 48 hours.
I like that. That's good. So we want to thank y'all for tuning in to another episode of the Author Showcase. Like I said, you can go to the website, www.tnbun.com. You can go over to the YouTube channel as well and see some of our great conversations with other authors that are part of the showcase that we've had for the last several years, and then also what we have coming up this year as well. You can go to the National Black Unity News newspaper on YouTube, put that in, and you'll be able to take a look and listen to those. And don't forget to subscribe, like, share, and comment on those as well. My name is Dr. Leroy McKenzie Jr., the Impact Builder, and we will talk with you all next time.